everyone! Welcome on the Aesthetic Software channel. My name is Erika. I will be your host today, and we will be animating and rigging a brand new character. I'll also be providing the files at the end of the stream so that you can calmly follow these. It was Natalia Marcos and Sinisha Matajic that drew and set up this character. And now, big reveal. So here's our character. It's called Helmet. So Helmet is a little pug. Did you guess it? Because it looked more like a bunny, like the silhouette of a bunny. We have this 8-direction character that was drawn by Sinisha and his wife Natalia. We're going to go over its structure, which is very similar to the structure that we did in earlier stream. I guess it's the same level of difficulty in terms of number of pieces than other characters that we did before in Spine, but we add a level of complexity because this character is going to have also different expressions. So he's going to be enraged, he's going to have a sullen face, a confused face, very shocked face, hungry, and so on. We're going to discover them as we go. Now, if you're familiar with the Photoshop to Spine script, you'll know that we use these tags in front of folders or after the folders to tell the Photoshop to Spine script what it should do with our files when it tries to export them for Spine. It can perform a lot of stuff for us to make our job easier. Now, an introduction that something that was introduced that is brand new and that it's going to be super useful is the fact that you can import new directions or new skins now directly inside your Spine file when it's already rigged. So if you remember the earlier streams where I was crying over the fact that I had to duplicate a skin and then replace everything, and if I wanted to add a different pose, it was again a reason to cry if I had too many pieces. Now this is completely automatic and it's amazing. I've been using it in the last months. I can tell you it changed my life. Also, we have these two guides here, which are useful because if we enlarge the image in Photoshop, because we add, I don't know, a version of him in horizontal and it wouldn't fit here, we can add it, resize this, and the guides are going to tell through the origin that we're gonna set like this, where the character should be centered no matter the size of the document. As I said, we have separate folders for the various effects, and we see here the from direction, but we also have other directions, such as this southeast direction, the east direction, northeast, so it's facing that way, the north direction, so it's facing the opposite way. So a lot of the things that are supposed to be that we have in the other slots are not present here because they are not necessary. And then for the opposite directions, since we are going to flip them, they are not really necessary except for this the Spine logo, which can't be flipped. So we'll have it this way. Just to make a comparison of what we could find inside, if you're familiar already with Spine, you should know that we have bones, and then the images are not added automatically inside Spine, but they are placed inside slots as attachments, which we can later convert to meshes or just leave as standard attachments. To save us some work, if we already name a folder as slot, or we could even name a layer as slot, and that will place it in the slot that we want, so that across the different directions that our character has, the script is going to know that when we have, for example, eyelid top, this slot here, for this direction, and we have it again here, so eyelid top, this one, it's going to be placed in the same, I picked the wrong one, but you get the gist. It's going to be placed in the same slot, so that instead of having these many pieces for every direction, we're going to have them grouped in the same slots so that it's less cluttered. I've already exported this character, But if we want to export, please head to the Photoshop to Spine video tutorial to have a complete explanation of what all the tags do and how to export. Now I'm going to import these. I just dragged and dropped the JSON file that was output with the Photoshop to Spine script inside the Spine window. This way, yeah, I can choose new project. It automatically imports it inside Spine for me without having to use the menu and search for it. I'm going to leave it, yeah, to new project, and Helmet is the name of our character. I like it, so I'm going to import it. There it is. Now you see that the draw order is a bit messed up, but that's not a problem. We're going to reorder it. Also, we're going to change the draw order for every direction. Now, let's talk about how we should tackle multi-direction characters and characters with multiple views. When we have to rig multiple direction characters, I already did this in the past with a series of streams, but since then things got luckily a bit easier. So we're going to see what new improvements were added inside Spine to make your life easier when dealing with these complex characters. Rules on how to simplify your work is for sure use the tagging system in Photoshop. It's important to try to structure your file before importing it in Spine, as I showed you earlier, as in detail as you can, meaning that if you can already set these slots inside Photoshop, it's going to make your life much more easier than if you had to structure everything in Spine, especially if you are going to later add new customizations to your character, new skins, new directions, new poses. You want to have it organized before, so in your Photoshop files. So the import can be this nice and clean. Now this is the import from a freshly exported JSON file, but as I said, we can reuse the same JSON that we exported from Photoshop even after we have a complete structure made in Spine with our bones, constraints, meshes, and we're going to see it later. When we have to decide which direction we should start with when dealing with a multi-directional character, we generally want to have the direction that has symmetrical parts. That is usually the one facing us. If so, the south direction or the front direction, this one. This is because we can duplicate parts such as the ears or other bones and reflect them. Also, it's good to have the character perfectly centered here in the middle so that when we reflect these bones, we can go really in deep precision when placing them. Okay, now this is ordered as well. If this view is not something that you have in your file, the 3/4 view is also a good view to start from. Anyway, the view that is going to be most cluttered with bones, because this front view has more pieces than the back view, and if we want to stack both of them together, we want to have the one that we're facing towards us in the setup, because it's easier. Let's consider how we want to structure our character. Now, I don't know how familiar you are with using Spine already, so I'll start a bit maybe from obvious things for people who are more experienced with Spine. Bear with me. So we're going to select the Create tool so that we can create new bones. How do you reorder quickly? Now that's a very good question. It's the plus and minus. It's going to change the draw order. Also, it helps if you filter the tree on slots and then you select the slot, and when you filter the tree on slots, you're going to see that the slots, the tree only shows slots, and when you reorder them, I press the plus I'm reordering them, I'm moving them up and down. If I press Shift minus, I'm going to move it by 5 positions. So we select the Create tool, we unfilter our tree if you still had the filter on like me, and we can create a new bone. Usually when you create a skeleton for a creature or a human or something that is standing on 2 legs, you want to start from the hips to move your character. Now, when I was starting with spine, I didn't know that, so I started from the head because it seemed logical. We want to start from our hips. So we select the root, we are in create mode, and then we can select the hips image by pressing Ctrl and keeping Ctrl pressed. Then I click to select the image. Now the image has an outline like this. From there, it's easy to click and center this where I want it to be in the image. Now I like it to be exactly at the end of his t-shirt. And now I'm going to do a little mistake on purpose. So I'll place it here instead, because I want to show you how to fix this. So since we are dealing with a character that is going to turn on itself, we want to have the main bones in the middle as much as possible, if that makes sense. So what we are gonna do is we compensate bones and images, since, well, in this case just images because we don't have children bones. And this allows us to move our bone without affecting the images. If I don't have compensate active, this is the result. We don't want this. So I activate compensation, and then to have it placed exactly in the middle, instead of trying to do this way, I'm going to type a nice 0 here, so it's perfectly centered in the middle, and that's why you want your character to be symmetrical, placed in the middle, and you start from the front view. Now that we have our hips, and you know that I like my yellow orangish for hips, yeah. Oh, now you see also my screen. Now my colleague, as said, also sent me some cute images of what this character should be able to do once we rig it in spine. And oh my god, it's so cute. Now, it's going to wave his little paws around to show you the various parts of spine. It's absolutely lovable. Look at this nice shear that he added. So what I want to check for is if his body is going to turn into weird ways, or if I can just have one bone, because one bone would be amazing. I think that is the case. So I'm going to create a new bone here, and again, I could create it anywhere and then have it perfectly placed. Now I'm obsessed with having bones perfectly placed, so bear with me because I'm totally going to do that now. So this character, I already checked, only has t-shirt and it's not naked underneath, it just doesn't exist. So we are going to select its t-shirt. Once again, I'm in create mode. I selected the parent bone, which is the hips. I select the t-shirt and then I click and drag from the t-shirt, but I'm going to make it here just so that I can later adjust it and make it perfect once again. Again, since I made this bone all in the wrong position, I'm going to fix it. I'm going to again compensate bones and images, although bones is not necessary in this case, and I'm going to place it so that the rotation is at 90 degrees, so it's fitting perfectly up. And to translate it exactly where the parent starts, I can move to the parent axis, so it tells me how far I am from my parent bone, and I'm going to set these to 0 and 0, the translate coordinates. I'm going to set the translate coordinates to 0 and 0. Okay, so now it's perfectly centered. We can also regulate how long the bone is by going, for example, in the translate tool here And if I hover over the tip of the bone, I can make it shorter so that it's just as long until it reaches the head. Now, I don't think this character has a neck. Let's discover it quickly. It doesn't. Okay, great. So I'm going to create a head bone next with the same logic. So I go in create mode. First I select the body bone, then I press Ctrl and select the head. Then I can select various other images. So they are going to be also automatically parented to the head bone that I'm going to create. Then I click and drag to create the head bone here. And it's going to be named the head. Now, again, my obsession with having everything perfectly placed forces me to have these. Okay, this is good. Now I want this to be at 0, and I want this. No, I accidentally created a bone, and now I have the head bone. Now, other bones that are absolutely necessary are the ones for the paws, for the legs, and then we have the various other ones. So this is the bare minimum that any skeleton that is humanoid should have. I'm going to start with just one side, and then I'm going to copy it and replicate it on the other side. So I select this body bone, I select first this arm, then the sleeve, and then for the bone placement of arms, I like to place it in the middle, because that way it's easier to rotate our character. We're going to probably need to add some meshes here for the t-shirt so that it behaves nicely. Yeah, I still have compensation active. So if I try to rotate it like this, it doesn't look great, but it is going to look great in the end. Like, what if I move it slightly up instead? So here, let's try. I think for such a small character, it may be better to have it slightly more up. And then I'm going to split this bone into 2 separate bones. So I select 2, nested, I press OK. So I have my arm controls here. So I'll try to first rig this side, and then I'll rig the other side by duplicating the various parts. Now I select the hips, because we want the legs to be parented to the hips and not to the body bone. And I'll create a new bone. Yeah, here is good. So this is its standing position. Now I'm going to split this one here too. So I want to change the colors of these to a nice red. So what spine does is, if 2 bones overlap, it will select the bone that was created first and then the other. So that's why it's so easy to select this one, I guess, in this case. Yeah, because if I go here, you see, until it overlaps with this one, it's the same story. So I have to hover a little bit more up to select the head instead. So it depends, and this is also an order that cannot be changed manually. And I already know that I want to create an IK constraint for the leg. So I want to call this, instead of leg 2, I'm going to call it leg down. Same here. Instead of arm 2, I wanted to name it arm down. You can create a bone at the tip if you are in parent axis and select new bone. This is super convenient when you don't want your bones to move from their place when they are following an IK constraint. I created the bone exactly on the tip. I'm going to call it our leg IK target. Super descriptive. And because I'm obsessed with having things neatly, etc., etc., Now you see that it's on 0 rotation now because we're in parent axis. So I switch to world axis because I see that this little bone is tilted, and I set it to 0 to have it neatly straight. And because IK targets cannot be the children of these two bones, I'm going to reparent it by pressing P to the root. I can create the little tailbone too, so let's do that very quickly. So we are going to select the head. So I'm going to select this image. I would normally just create one bone like this. Yeah, we're in the middle. Okay, so it's parallel to this side here. But because his ears need to be able to make an S movement, I guess I'll have to add to split this into 2 nested bones. Yeah, I'm going to rename this to top. Okay, so now we have our ears. I'm also going to color them differently, like in a nice green. Also notice that I started with the ears because they are the ones more in the back of the head. So when I create a bone for the eyebrow that we have here, it's going to be in front of the ears. So I hold create here, and I create one for the eyebrow here. So I'm going to use this as a reference to where to place the bone for this one. So I'm going to select the head bone, and then I'm going to create a general bone that will control where the eye is. So we can move it around like this. And I'm selecting both images of the base of the eye and of the reflection. And then I'm gonna click to create one here in the middle. Why I want to have this in the middle is because if I want to move his eyes around and maybe scale them down, it's easier to do them if this bone is in the middle of the eye. Also, it's nice to not have this bone exactly where the pupil is because then the pupil is easier to select. So now I'm going to create, after selecting the eye bone, here my pupil, and then I'm going to zoom in dramatically. There. I'm going to change this to a cute icon and this to an eye icon, a creepy eye icon. So I'll create one here, so we will be able to maybe expand the blush or move it around. We have separate parts, mouth parts. So we have a front, a down version, and then the inside, and of course the teeth, etc. separate. But Sinisha did this, which is very smart, which is for the image that it's going to be more in the front. We have one single image to plaster in front of everything when we want to radically change expression, like this. Of course, if you want to have total control, you could have all of these separate, but it's going to be a lot of work, and you would need an animation library, which is an animation that you create where you store all these setups ready to copy and paste in your other animations. So far we have only created bones. Yeah, I'm going to just create a bone here for the muzzle first, and then I'm going to start creating some meshes. First of all, we'll have to turn this image into a mesh to be able to create a structure for it. Now, an easy way to do this, in some cases it works, but it doesn't always work, is to use the tracing function. If you tweak this and if you have a lot of patience, you can get something good out of it. I sometimes test this and this is not bad. But I'm going to replicate the same by creating a new mesh now. So usually I'll start from something that touches the border here. Then I'll go on the other corner. Then I'll go here. And I'll try to make them symmetrical as much as possible. Now when we will have the rulers with actual guides, it's going to be amazing. For now, the fact to have rulers is already amazing. I'm going to do this. Nice. So we have this outer hull, but of course, if we try to just deform this outer hull, it's not going to react well. Instead, we need to create what has a name now, which is a tubular mesh. So we are going to add some vertices to cross it so that it can bend on the sideway, following this bone here. Another thing that I think that I want to add is the possibility to have his body turn in a slightly 3D-ish way. So perhaps I'm going to add a control in the middle here to be able to move his tummy. Also, his tummy is so cute. Well, first, let's create the structure for a tubular mesh, and then we're going to add complexity to it. So we want to have vertices at the opposite sides equally spaced, or at least spaced evenly. Now you see that some of these vertices don't connect how I'm expecting them to connect. So I have to click and drag to force them to behave the way I want. Alright, I don't think that after his armpits I'm going to bend it any more. So instead of adding vertices here, which will be totally unnecessary, I'm perhaps going to add a couple more points here where the bending is going to be more visible. So I'm concentrating the vertices where they are actually needed. Now, I think it's more formative if I first show you how to make this mesh bend and then I add the complexity. Because the nice thing about meshes and rigging in Spine in general is that we can always go back and improve something that we have worked on at a later date when it is necessary. Like if you need to add a feature to a character that it didn't have before, it's possible. And you can do it also after you've already created animations and so on, which is amazing. The easiest way to weight your character, or to weight a mesh, is to do it in animate mode for two reasons. You avoid accidentally leave the bones in a state that is not exactly the one that you had in setup mode if you forgot to undo something. And you can also preview immediately what you were working on. But since in the recent versions of Spine, we introduced the possibility to bind the mesh in animate mode. So if you're new to Spine, pay attention. You must be in setup mode when you bind your mesh if you want the mesh to follow the position of your bones when they are in setup mode. If you are adding different positions, like alternative positions with very different bone placement, then you are good to do this in animate mode. But if you are new, pay attention, you need to be in setup mode. So we open the weights panel by clicking here on the tools weights, and we bind it while we're here. Now, demonstration. Let's pretend that I'm doing this here and I say, haha, yeah, let's test how this bone here turns. Oh, that's nice. I'm doing everything correctly. I'm in animate mode, right? But then I say, okay, now I want to create a mesh for this, and I want it to bind this mesh to these two bones, right? So this is my setup position. Now if I go in setup mode and I try to weight this, for example, I weight it to the hips, it's suddenly moving. When this moves and you're in setup mode, it means that you accidentally weighted this in animate mode. Now, there are two ways to fix this. First, make sure that the mesh looks exactly how it's supposed to look in setup mode, and you can click Update Bindings. Now, the new binding position is the one that you have in setup mode. A second way is to go in animate mode, where it looks good, remove all the bones, and then you redo the process when you are in setup mode. You can even select the mesh and reset. In this case, it's already reset, so it doesn't display a warning, but let's say that I do this. Then I click reset, and it says, oh, pay attention. Are you sure? I'm going to remove the weights. Do you want to remove the weights? I say yes. And now I have a clean slate again. So it's important that you pay attention to where you are binding the bones of the to the mesh, because the mesh is going to store the bones position no matter where they are. This also is the same if, for example, you do everything here in setup mode, so you do this, and then you move one bone around, because, I don't know, you say, I want this bone slightly more up. So you select the bone, you move it a little bit more up, and then, if I'm not mistaken, if I now change the weights, yeah, it's going to deform my t-shirt. But maybe I didn't want to deform my t-shirt because I wanted liked it the way it was. So I click update bindings, and if I try it now, it stays the same. Okay. So to avoid any problems, I'm going to remove the weights now, and I'm going to do it how we are supposed to do this. I first select bind, and I select the hips, then I select the body, I bind, and at this point we can start to test the weights in animate mode. So I select here. Now, if you read the blog post where I explain how meshes work, this is one of the tips. Start how weighting work. Start from extremes. So I'm starting from the uppermost part of the mesh, and I'm setting its weights to 100%. Now I know that these four vertices are going to always be that way. I don't want to change their weights because it makes no sense to have a mesh with two bones where there are vertices that are never 100% to one of the bones. I mean, there are some cases, but in most cases, what you want is to start like this. You have to be brave and not be afraid to give that 100% to your mesh. And then I'm going to smooth until it looks good, because Spine can do it automatically for me. So I'm going to make him do the heavy work. So now if I test this, looking good. Yeah. Okay, so I think I don't know. I don't want. It's for this part here to ever be detached from the arms. So I'm going to set this to 100%. And I assume this too. Yeah. So that's a thing you can notice when you are testing your skeleton. So because I changed that, I'm going to smooth the weights again so that they'll so that they'll adapt to these new weights. And it's better. Now, as you see, the spine logo is not deforming in a great way, is it? So we are going to add that other level of complexity, which is we are going to add a control on the tummy so that we can control how the tummy bounces, and we can also make the logo safe. So we're going back in setup mode, create, we select the body, and I'll create a bone here, which I'll call it tummy. Yeah, I like that. So next I'm going to center this. Okay. And now I'm going to remove this 004. Oh, that's nicer. I'm going to save. And now I'm going to add some vertices to my mesh so that the mesh can control better this middle part. So I'll edit the mesh, and I think it will be enough if I add just these points, just these vertices. Okay, so you see that spine already makes the connections that I would make, so it makes it easier for me to make this a little bit symmetrical. So I did this not perfectly, so I'm going to adjust it. Not that it matters that much, but the more you can make this symmetrical, the better it's going to be. Actually, perhaps I'm going to add a couple more vertices here, because that's going to give a more rounder I missed the word, complexion to the character. Okay, and now I'm going to add this tummy bone, and I'm going to test it. I can test it in this position if I want. Here, for example, I move it, and then I add the weights for this. Now, because I know that likely this has, first select the tummy bone, and then I box select the vertices here, because I know that they are likely going to have a similar influence to that bone. I'm going to raise them all at once with the same weight. So something like this, so it's not too much. Then perhaps I select just these 4, which are going to be the ones most influenced by it. And let's test this. So if I move this way, and I translate this bone, okay. So it's not completely bad. He's pregnant. I want to add a bit more influence on these 2 vertices here, because right now it's like this, and so I'm going to raise the influence here, and perhaps also here a little bit, a tiny bit, so we can simulate this depth a little bit better. And this is the result. It's a very soft tummy, and we can direct it however we want. So I think I'm going to use it just for you know, when he's jumping and then he arrives, the tummy is going to follow and then go back. So something, yeah, just something subtle, not super strong. I think I'm going to lower this one too. How about now? Yeah, this is the result I want. I like it. Blah blah blah. Fantastic. So I'm going to save. I was able to manipulate this however I wanted, because I was in animate mode. Never do this in setup mode, because there will be that one time where you forget to undo, and then now if you have a setup like this one where everything is centered, it's easy to reset your bones to their original position. Otherwise, it's going to be a bit harder. We're going to do this easy ear mesh here. So let's start with this. We go and create the mesh, edit the mesh, and create a new mesh. Now I'm going to start from the 2 angles that we have here, and then I'm going to touch the border and enclose these here. See how I'm using the projection of where the vertex is going to be to establish where I should place it, so that the image is not cut out. I want it to be as close as possible, but not so close that it would cut a part of the image out. So here is going to be good enough, and I close it. And now I start slicing it so that the ear can deform. Okay, I'll start by adding the vertices that are inevitably, like, I can't get rid of this one because it's needed to enclose the image here. And I can't get rid of this one either, so I start with these two vertices, and that's easy. Then maybe I want a vertex here so that it's close to where these pans, these two bones separate. Then I want a vertex here to make his ear a bit flappier. I'm going to connect this one. Yeah, I'm going to add another vertex here and here, two vertices, and maybe one here. Now the structure here revolted against me, so I'm going to force it back in line. Okay, so I have already many points. I am allowing myself these many points because this is for a video. I could add many more, but I like to start from a reasonable amount of vertices, and in case add more if I feel they are needed because this is not smooth enough, rather than adding a gazillion in the beginning and getting crazy trying to weight them correctly. So now I switch to animate mode, and first I rotate this bone here. Okay, and what we want to do is for this base here to always stick to the head. So we are going to weight this mesh to the head and the two ears, ear and ear top. So we are going to weight this to the head like this, and then I guess, okay, the automatic weighting is probably great in this case, but for the sake of learning, I'm going to do it how I would do it, which is you always start from the most from the bone that is upper in the list of the parent bones to weight a mesh, and then I select the vertices that I want to be smoothed, so to include this head bone here. So I guess it will influence until this part, and then I don't want to have any more head weights. So I'm going to smooth it now. And then I need to add the influence of this bone here. Okay, so I raise this to 100%. And then I select all these nice bones, all these nice vertices, and smooth them. Oh, I forgot this one. Okay. So now when I pose this, you see, here it makes these sort of little bumps because the original image is curved. This either requires us to draw a straighter, but I can actually correct this in this case. So to avoid that, either I get this closer like this, so I minimize the bump. Can't get any closer than this for this one. Otherwise, I get a straighter image. Always start with straight images, as straight as possible. So this is the result. Now in this case, I think I can add some more vertices because I looked at the result and I think there is more, like in this way, it's super cute. So here, and then I wanted to also get this vertex closer, these two, and we get as close as possible. It's already better. I still see a bit of an artifact here. Yeah, and it's also something that I can see clearly from afar. So in this case, the drawing is it's not helping us. Yeah, the problem is these lines here that get created. So either I add points right where the line is to um, remove the artifacts. If this part can't bend that much, it's not going to be visible. And then it will create them on this side. Let's see the result. At least we solved it here. And as I knew that would happen, it created it on this side. So I'm going to create this border of points on both. That's why another rule of creating meshes is to follow the lines present in the drawing itself. So we do this and this. Okay. So this way the line art is going to be preserved. Oh, it's finally acceptable. Now, I'll let you see how it was and how we've improved it. You see, it's much smoother now. Oh, hi, Soxy! Don't worry, there's going to be more streams. So now I can bend it in the opposite direction and it still looks good. I may just have to fix perhaps a weight here. Okay, I just smoothed it and it did it for me, which is amazing. Thanks for the smoothing function. And I have this super smooth, super cute ear that I can flap around and it can do lots of stuff. Oh, it's so cute. This, perhaps something that it's going to be interesting is this sleeve here, because it has to stay attached to the body. So mesh with this sleeve. We transform this into a mesh. Then I'll create a new mesh. Maybe I can trace it. Yeah, I'll keep this one. I like the outer hull of this one. I'll just move this slightly more up. This is good. And then I'll create a couple lines. So here we have a fold. So we're going to take advantage of this fold to create a vertex that crosses it. So if the image deforms, it will follow this fold, the natural fold of the drawing, which is going to be perfect for us. Now, I'm not sure if this is going to deform perfectly, but I'm going to leave it as it is, and in case change the way the geometry connects the vertices if needed. So I'm going to accept this shape here. Okay, a consideration. This is a multi-direction character, and I want to be able to move this arm around on need. I was going to say that I would have bound the sleeve to this arm bone and to the body. But since I want to be able to move this sleeve around, if, I don't know, for animation purposes, I may want to have this part going more in the front or in the back, or maybe when he raises his arm, he does something particular. I want to be able to have the independence to do however I please. So to gain that independence, I'm going to have to create a new bone that will replace the body and make this sleeve independent from it, but still giving the illusion of following the body. So I go in create mode. I'm in setup mode, otherwise I cannot create new bones. I can just press new bone and it created it on the tip, which is something I don't want. So I take it back to 0 and 0, and then in world axis I set the rotation to 0, so I know that this is the straight position. In case I move it around during an animation, I know that I edited it this way. Cool. Next thing I need to do is to, well, rename this bone to our arm holder, because it's holding the bone within itself. And then instead of being this way. I'm going to parent it to the body, and then I'm going to parent the arm to this holder this way. So bind, and I select arm holder and the arm. Now if I animate this, I'm going to clear my animation since I have lots of things. I'm going to pose this up, and I'm going to change the weights. Now again, I know that these vertices need to have 100% of the arm. Then I'm going to, oh yeah, almost. This needs to be attached to the body, so it's weighted to that holder instead. And I'm changing it. Now the cool thing about having a holder is that I can move it around and see the result here. Okay, so here we have that classic problem of the shoulder that gets inset. And we could create a shoulder helper for that. I'm not sure if it's worth it. In this case, if I lower it, this is going to be a result, not a great result. What if I add another vertex here in the middle? So, because as I was afraid, the geometry here isn't the best. If I take it up, this is the result. This result is terrible. But when I rotate it this way, instead of rotating this arm, I can always rotate, yeah, but you have to rotate. I can always rotate this bone instead. So you see that the advantage of using a separate bone for this. It makes it independent. We're going to add 3 more bones to go around the shoulder problem. I would have loved to avoid doing this, but otherwise a lot of things are going to be harder to make. And the job of rigging in Spine is to make life easier when you are going to animate, and not rig something in an easier way that is later harder to animate. So it's best to sacrifice ourselves to add a couple more controls so that animating is going to be a breeze in this case. So I'm going to create the shoulder from this bone that we have here, this here, and we're going to make it stick out this way and then reach here to simulate, so that we can simulate the bump of this shoulder here when we animate, because otherwise it's going to, with the rotation, it's going to get inside. Clavicle, thank you. Clavicola. Yeah, it was similar. I should have been able to remember that. So I select my bone here, and then roughly in the middle between these two, I create a bone here, and I make it stick out. Perhaps, yeah, I can aim for making it reach this place, and then I want it to also reach here, and then I create a bone on the tip, but then I'm going to parent this bone that I created on the tip of my new structure here. Also, because these are so visually strong, I'm going to lower their opacity a lot to, so that I don't have to deactivate them, but and I remember they are there. When you write to me, it's super appreciated, so don't be afraid to ask even questions that may sound stupid, because these streams are for you, okay? And the fact that you're joining live means a lot. So you are entitled to ask that question since you took the time to come live on stream, okay? Here I select arm holder, and we'll create a new IK constraint, the first of the stream. I know. And we select the target and click OK. Now you see that this goes inside, but then these two bones have the position that we want. So we are going to bind these two to the sleeve. So first I select the sleeve, bind, 1, 2, and now if I raise the weights like this, finally we have justice for our arm holder, for our arm, the shoulder. Okay, perhaps a bit more by this, here too. Now I don't particularly like this deformation here. I'm going to look at it. That's a problem with textures. Yeah, and that is why it would have been perhaps good to have a version of this image in a T-pose, as Antonov suggested. So let me just wrap this up, and then I'll also end this stream for today. I think this is good. We can't do anything about this. Perhaps if I change the way this mesh, okay, if I add the vertex here, does the vertex improve anything? No. Okay. Well, never mind then. So we did several meshes. We did the basic front structure. Yeah, the idea is that we'll complete these parts, the front view, and move to the next view. So we'll see how to readapt our rig for another direction, which I hope you find very interesting, and that's where we'll use some new techniques. As always, if you tune in live, you are allowed to ask questions and get answers live, where I'll probably demonstrate things. You can always ask questions in the comments below the video. So let's say that this was the introduction part, the basics, and the next time we're gradually going to do something more advanced. Feel free to tag me. Remember to use the hashtag MadeWithSpine so I get to see it. And thank you again. See you next time.